Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Press A to Talk. My name is Kurt, and I'm joined by John. Say hello, John.
Hello, hello.
Today, we're going to talk about Fire Emblem. Specifically, we're going to have a review for Fire Emblem Engage at the very end of this, but we want to talk about kind of the series as a whole and our experience with it. John, I just kind of put all the games, their cover art, like in order of release, starting
hmm
in like
hmm
America. And so my very first Fire Emblem game was just called Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance. In Japan, it releases the Blazing Sword. Was that your
hmm
first Fire Emblem game?
Yes, it was. So this is Fire Emblem 7, if I'm not mistaken. So it's
Yes.
pretty interesting to know this is the first one because for some reason, I thought the one on the GameCube would have been the first one, but
Mm-mm.
I didn't know actually. So I actually have a story on how I got my first Fire Emblem game because I remember it that vividly.
Okay.
So I grew up in a small town, and there was a gas station across the street from the school, and my parents needed to go get some gas after they picked us up from school one day. And for some reason, we went in there, and they have like a little thrift section. It's a very small town, so there's like odds and ends people sell there.
Uh huh.
And for some reason, there was about four or five Fire Emblem Sevens just on the shelf for sale for I think $15. And I was like, I've never seen this game before, but it looks cool. And I turned it over on the back.
It's
I was
like
looking
in
at the
box.
combat. Yeah, it was the
That's
box and
crazy.
everything. Yeah, and I turned the box over and I was like, this looks so much fun. And I was like, can I get this? And I got it.
And they're
And
like,
that's
sure,
how I,
$15. We're at a gas station.
right,
Sure.
exactly. Why wouldn't I buy a game at a gas station? So I bought Fire Emblem at a gas station and it became one of my favorite games.
That's so. I've never in my life, as a child or since, seen a video game being sold at a gas station. That's crazy.
Yeah, and then because it's a small town, fun fact, we have a skating rink that also used to sell video games too.
um, my story is, I don't know if similar might be a stretch, but my dad growing up worked for a charter bus company, and he was mostly in charge of like mechanical stuff, but every once in a while he would help clean them too. And I got countless like game cartridges from people who just like left them on the bus. They would
Oh,
hold
I
them there
bet.
for a few months, but if no one ever called about it, they were just like, well, I guess we'll just throw it away or keep it. And Kyle and I, my brother and I, were super into
hmm
games, and so he would just like bring home stuff that he knew we could play. And I think that's where this came from because this I was little. I had a Game Boy Advance,
Right.
but my brother mostly was picking and buying and getting the games, and I just kind of played whatever. And I know that this was just like a loose cartridge that showed up one day, so I think that's where it came from. So
Okay.
kind of a weird random entry point for both of us. But yeah, like John said, this is Fire Emblem 7, the seventh game in the series. In Japan, I believe it has the translated subtitle of Blazing Sword, and this is the first game they brought over because originally they thought that it was too, I don't know,
Too
complicated
difficult of a
or
series.
yeah, for Westerners to play, because it's a pretty like in depth strategy RPG if you're unfamiliar with the series. But it came over and it was relatively successful because they started releasing more and more. But it's really weird because this one's actually a prequel to Fire Emblem 8.
Six.
6,
Oh,
I'm
is it
sorry.
eight?
Yeah, no, you're right, you're right. 6. It's a prequel to Fire Emblem 6, which didn't come out in America and still
hmm
hasn't. There's like an English fan translation that I really want to play on one day, and we'll talk about
I
that in a
played some of it.
second. Yeah, but yeah, this game opens up with, if you can look at the character art, there's three main characters: Elwood with the red hair, Lynn with the green hair, and in the back Hector with the blue hair. And the main character is actually Elwood, and then Hector has kind of like an alternate story where it's like the same events but kind of focusing on his perspective. Lynn originally was kind of like a tertiary character where she was still like one of the main three but definitely the least important. But my understanding is when they ported it for the West, they turned her story, gave her kind of like a prologue that was 10 chapters of tutorial to teach Westerners how to play Fire Emblem because we'd never really played a game like it. And because of that, Lynn got like hugely popular over here to the point where most people consider her the main character of the game, even though the first 10 chapters are about her and then the next like 35, 40 are not about her at all.
Hmm hmm
But I've been talking a lot about this. What do you think of this game, like as a kid, and what do you think about it now?
I agree with you. Like when I first played this as a kid, I really thought she was the main character
Hmm.
because the first 10 chapters, that's the ones I repeated the most as a kid, So uh, that was kind of how it resonated with me that she was the main character originally, and then she got some friends along the way, and then it kind of put the limelight on Ellawood there as it moved on to his story because it felt like most of her story was completed in that first section.
Hmm.
So that's how I seen it anyway as a kid. And then I loved this game as a kid. Like I said, I repeated this game a lot, trying to get better and better at it, and it just was a really fun game to just play in the back of the car.
Yeah, and the sprite work is gorgeous. The
Hmm.
strategy was like, in my opinion, perfect for like a kid's game.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
think I got to chapter like 35 or to 40 somewhere in there before I got stuck, and this is when I was like 11.
Right.
Like for a strategy game for a kid to make it that far, that's very approachable, but it's also really deep. And I don't remember if there are difficulty modes in this one, or maybe
There are.
Hector's story. Was it just the hard one, or was there like a hard mode?
Hard mode is Hector mode.
Gotcha. So I
Yeah.
didn't ever get very far in Hector's story. I think I got to like 20 with Hector, and I was like, "No, we're done. Let's go back to Elwood." But yeah, so that's the first game that came out. It's great if you're interested in the series and you like pixel art and you haven't played this one. I would definitely recommend going back to this one. And then again, Fire Emblem 6, which was the prequel to this one, was I lost the translation. I think it's called the Binding Blade.
Binding Blade,
Yeah, it's
yes.
called the Binding Blade. So this came out again. This is Fire Emblem 6. It came out in Japan before the previous game, but takes place after in the same like timeline in the same
Right.
world. This character Roy, who if you played Smash Brothers, he's in that, is the son of Elwood, the protagonist of the last game, and I super duper want them to make an English translation for this. Not a remake. I don't need 3D graphics or anything like that. I just want to play it in English. And John, you said you played a little bit of a fan translation.
Yeah, I played some of the English version of this.
Yeah, how is it?
It's uh, it's very comparable to Fire Emblem 7, the translations and the mod versions. So some of the maps do repeat from 6 and 7, and
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's
So
interesting.
and whenever you get down into the game, they're very similar creation wise, and the modding community actually has a tool for you to make your own Fire Emblem games, and it can use this game, Sacred Stones, and 7, and they're all built so similarly
Mm,
that it can run and edit all three of them. So
that's really
um,
cool.
very
Yeah,
similar in the development aspect as well.
I mean, same platform, same engine. A lot of the
Engine,
sprites are shared between them, so that
exactly.
makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I would really like to play this game. I've heard it's not the best Fire Emblem. I've heard that Roy is not the best protagonist, just like as a unit. I've heard he's kind of weak.
He
Um,
is, yeah.
but I still would like to play it just as someone who loves those games, and I love the art style of those Game Boy Advance games. I desperately
Well,
want them to return to that.
this
Um,
game has something very interesting. They have surprise reinforcements. So the reinforcements that show up on the maps, they move and attack the same turn they show up.
oh my gosh,
So yeah, this game you have to be careful
that's like
because
extra
it's
mean.
a lot more difficult. Yeah,
Oh
well,
man,
from my understanding, is they made 7 and the ones after. I don't remember if 7 had surprise reinforcements.
I don't think so.
Um, but yeah, I didn't remember for sure, but I didn't think they did. So they actually made the game easier for the US whenever they shipped it out because they thought that the Westerners wouldn't be able to handle the difficulty in the game.
Well, maybe they were right. Who knows?
Who knows?
Um, like you mentioned, the next game was called Sacred Stones. And as much as I love Fire Emblem 7, as much as that game is near and dear to my heart, I think this might be the best Fire Emblem game on the Game Boy Advance. What do you think?
I did love the fact that you could actually go to that tower and grind levels in this game
Yeah,
to
that was nice.
so you could actually pick out which units you wanted to use. So, for example, I also love the child units in that game because they got a whole nother 10 or something levels than the other units. So they start off really, really weak, but if you go grind them in that tower, they just surpassed every other unit they gave you. So I made sure to use those. I know Ross was one of them, and then there
Yeah.
was a mage. I can't remember his name,
I don't remember.
but
Isn't the mage Ewan?
yes, yes,
And
he
then
is.
there's
And
a soldier named Amelia.
Amelia. Yeah, I used all three of those in my
Yeah.
playthrough. Amelia and Ephraim, is that his name?
Yeah.
I just love the design of Lance units.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very unique. Is this the game they also introduced the Halberdier as well?
The halberdier, or actually, you
Yes.
might be saying it right. I'm. Oh yeah, yeah, like a walking lance unit as like a
Yes.
class.
That's not a heavy armor unit.
I
So
think
that's,
so.
I think so too. Because
Ephraim
that's one of my
definitely had that
favorite.
kind of vibe, but he was also a
Right.
lord, so it was kind of a special class.
Those are my favorite classes in the games. And originally, the soldier enemy, you were never allowed to be one of those in
Right.
seven. And so I don't remember if there was a halberdier class in seven either, for the enemies, but I know that in the later games they added them in, but you didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
character that you could be one of those. So I was glad they introduced that and made that an option in the future.
They introduced a lot of really cool classes in this. I
Hmm.
think this is one of the first times the Great Knight makes an appearance. Because what they
Right, because it
did,
was only general before.
yeah, because what they did is they turned. So, if you haven't played Fire Emblem, first of all, do that. Finish this video, do that, then you'll understand what we talked about. But each unit has like a class, and once they get strong enough in a class, they can get promoted to an advanced class. And typically in Fire Emblem games before Sacred Stones, it was straightforward. It was mage to sage. It was cavalier to paladin. It was knight to general. But Fire Emblem Sacred Stones opened up sort of like a branching path, where if you were a knight, you could turn into a general, or you could turn into a great knight, which is like a heavily armored horse unit. And then the cavalier could turn into a paladin, or they could also turn into a great knight. And they all kind of connected around that way, which I thought was really interesting.
Hmm.
And then, like you mentioned earlier, John, with like Amelia and Ross, there were also kind of rookie
Journeyman,
classes. Yeah, so like the journeyman could turn into the
pupil.
fighter, could turn into a warrior or a berserker,
Hmm.
and they could just get stronger and stronger and stronger, which is kind of a trend that's carried forward in Fire Emblem of finding a really
Hmm.
weak character, dealing with that for a while, and then them becoming just like the knockout all star of your army.
Now that you mention it, every single Fire Emblem game I've played that has introduced that, I've always used those units
Hmm.
just because the designs are usually really cool,
Yeah,
and then they just become so overpowered. It's amazing.
it is. It's super awesome. But yeah, this game had a world map, which was the first one, at least in the West, to do that. You could
Hmm.
explore, you could get into skirmishes, which is something that's popular now. It had a really good story. It's all about like sibling bonds,
Hmm. And they're
friendship,
twins. We didn't mention.
betrayal. What'd you say?
And they're twins, right? We didn't
Yeah,
mention that. Yeah.
yeah. The main characters in the box, that's Ephraim and Erica. I'm sure you can figure out which is which, but they're siblings, and then they have a best friend named Lion, who's no spoilers, but he does some things and it's kind of heartbreaking. So I think this has the most personal story. Most of the time, Fire Emblem stories are very over the top, like save the world from the dragons, and this one is very close to home. Like, oh, your best friend
Hmm.
betrayed you. Now go deal with the consequences of that.
Right.
And the next game, which is I think the one you were thinking of, John, is Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. And if you
Hmm.
recognize that handsome fella front and center, that's because you played Fire Emblem. And that, my friend, is Ike, who is the best character in Fire Emblem. And is also the protagonist of one of the few Fire Emblem games I've actually never played. Have you played it at all, John?
This game,
Yeah.
I played through a good bit of it. I never completed it, but I probably made it about halfway into the game. But
Okay.
when I was younger, you kind of play a bunch of games, but you never finish any of them.
Sure.
So,
Any
but yeah,
memories from what you did play?
yes, this is the game that has the Lagoos, who are
Yes.
people that wear rings and they can transform into animals. So you're introduced to two of them, about chapter 7 or 8. And one of them turns into a tiger-like creature, and then another one a cheetah-like creature.
Okay.
And they're very interesting. Um, and they're very powerful, but I believe there's a lot of issues in that game when it comes to the treatment of the Laguz people, and
Yeah,
that's what the main story is based around, as far
because
as my recollection.
I think they might have like accessories that help them use their powers, but I'm pretty sure they are just like a separate species. So there's like humans and there's Laguz, or they're like
Right.
a type of human that can turn into animals just like
Yeah.
naturally.
I think
And
they need a
so
ring or something like that to do it, but yeah.
yeah, and there's like class division based on that where people look down upon the Laguz, even though the Laguz seem pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into the sequel. Direct sequel to this game was called Radiant Dawn. It also features Ike, and I did play this one. The Laguz make a return in this one as well, and it's still that kind of class warfare. It follows the story of Path of Radiance. The In Path of Radiance, you're playing as Ike, who is becomes the leader of a group of mercenaries when he's very young, and he's hired by a kingdom to kind of help take down a mad king. Even though he isn't even though the characters you're playing as aren't really political agents, they are hired and serve as, and they are kind of trying to do what's right. This game, Radiant Dawn, does the fallout of what happens there and like the power vacuum and the struggle. And I love this game. This game was on Wii, and unlike most Fire Emblem games, yeah, I'm sorry, John, I'm just gushing. Have you played this?
I have not played Radiant
Oh my
Dawn.
gosh, it's so good. So instead of having just like a linear story where you have a main character, by the way, on the cover there, white hair, that's Micaiah. She's the main character. The guy beside her's name is Soth. He's important, but I wouldn't call him a main character. Um, you start out with Micaiah, who is leading a small rebellion that's happening in one corner of a country, and then you do like 10 chapters at her, and all of a sudden you're playing as the army of a queen from a completely different kingdom who's dealing with the fallout of the same issues, but completely different area, completely different people, completely different ramifications of what's going on. And then you finish, 10, 15 chapters with her, and then all of a sudden you're back with Ike, and you're seeing what the mercenaries are up to since they had their victory. And then you finish with them, and all of a sudden you're with a Laguz country that's trying to figure out what's going on with them and struggling with, well, how do we not get treated like garbage while also not becoming the monsters they say we are by fighting back? And then it ends with the groups kind of meeting together and coming together to kind of fight a greater evil and look beyond differences. And it's really interesting from a story perspective. I'm not saying it's one of the greatest stories ever written, but very rarely do you get to see every side of a conflict, and much less have a story that's detailed enough to have that many perspectives in it.
That does seem like an interesting take. I didn't realize all the different branching paths that had. I want to say Soth. I've heard that name before.
He was in
Is he?
Path of Radiance, I think. I think he kind of
That's
ended up with the mercenaries for a little while.
that's why I thought I'd heard that name before. Okay, I
Yeah.
thought he was in the other one, but I didn't know for sure.
So,
Okay.
so this takes place several years later when like Soth and Ike are adults rather than kids like they were in Path of Radiance.
Okay.
So there's a lot of
Got it.
returning characters from that game. There's a lot of new characters. Um, so are you familiar with the term a Jagan when I say a character is a
Oh yeah,
Jagan?
I'm very familiar with a
Okay.
Jagan. Yeah.
So for the audience, a Jagan is like an extremely overpowered unit you get at the beginning of the game that can basically solo like the first 5 chapters, but then very quickly starts falling off in terms of power. So if you
Yeah.
rely on him too heavily at the beginning, then you're going to be underleveled with your other characters later on.
They're
I
made so you can level your other characters. Usually, the idea behind the Jagan is to let you hit an enemy, and then it gets them low enough where your main characters can finish them off so you can level your main characters.
Yeah, and it's named after the first unit from the first game that was built like that, whose name was Jagan. But in most of the time, it's like a really burly dude. Most of the time, in like an old burly dude, but sometimes they're young. That's on a horse. But in Radiant Dawn, actually at the beginning, it's Sothis, who you can see on the screen, and he's like a rogue class, so he's like an upgrade of a thief, which is typically a
That's
very weak
interesting.
class. But he's much stronger than all the other units, and he gets critical hits all the time, and so it's just interesting. He's the most unique Jagan archetype. But yeah, this game is phenomenal. I got to the last 3 chapters, and I didn't finish it. And let me tell you why I didn't finish it, John.
Go for it.
Because whenever you start this game in English, the difficulty options are easy, normal, and hard. When you start the game in Japanese, the direct translations are normal, hard, and lunatic, which means they mistranslated it and everything in English is described as an easier mode than it actually is. So if you're playing the English version of Radiant Dawn and you play on easy, in Japan that was what was considered normal. And if you play in English normal, that's the hard mode in Japan. And so it's just a weird translation error. But
Yeah.
it goes from, oh, we need to make Fire Emblem easy in the West to play on hard mode, but don't know about it. And so I got to the very end, and you have to make some choices where you can only carry certain units with you. And I picked units that I liked, and not necessarily my strongest ones, and I ended up just getting wrecked and not really having a way to go back because I didn't save intelligently.
Yep, that'll do it.
That'll do it.
Especially in the older games.
Do it.
I said, especially in the older games, they're a lot less forgiving.
But yeah, this game is so good. It introduced I think Path of Radiance might have introduced like the skill systems that we have now, where different classes and different units will have unique skills that will let them do special things on the battlefield, and sometimes you can inherit and trade skills from and to other units. And I could talk about this game for hours. It's so good. You got to play it if you haven't. But I shall not, and will continue. The next game is... Where'd it go? There it is. The next game is Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. This was a remake of the original game that came out on the DS. Have you played this one, John?
I've played some of this one. The DS games are going to be where I played a good bit of them, but didn't finish them.
That's okay. I enjoyed this game, but it's definitely... of the ones I've played that we've talked about, the weakest one so far. And that's fair. It's a remake of a game that came out in the 1990s. I'm not going to say a specific year because I don't remember. Like 94?
If I'm not mistaken, this is the game that one of your very early units is a barbarian. Is that right? Or barbarian-like class, brigand?
You start with Marth, who's the main character of really the series. He's in Smash as well.
Right.
And then to the left of Marth is, with the blue hair, is Kada. You get her. And then on the far left is Merrick. You get him. And I'm sorry, not Merrick. That's Ogma. And then when you get Ogma, I think you get 3 like fighter brigand classes. So they're like 3 axe wielders that all kind of do the same thing.
I very much remembered that because I was like, oh, I like these units. This is cool.
Yeah. I think their names are Bard, Card, and Barst or something weird like that. It's really strange.
Oh, I thought the one I was thinking of was a woman, so maybe I'm thinking of the wrong game.
I don't know, maybe. But yeah, this is a remake of the original. It's not very pretty to look at. It's the first handheld game that went 3D, and the DS was not great at 3D. I don't really know why they chose to do that. Huh?
It tried its best.
It did, but they look weird. Like, if you just look up Marth's portrait from this game, he just looks like he's made of Play-Doh. It's very strange.
I think I actually have this game sitting in the shelf right here.
Oh, yeah?
Now that I think about it, yeah.
It's a good... I still recommend it. Like, it's still a good game, and it's the best way to play the original game right now. But speaking of the original game, the original one was called Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. And it was Japanese exclusive until, like, 2021? I think 2020, 2021, when they released it for Switch, just an English translation. And that's right, that's Marth. And no, he is not wearing pants. That's all I got. But yeah, did you play this when it came to Switch?
No, I did not. Is this the one that was only for sale for like a very limited time? Or is that a different one?
I think it's still for sale.
Okay. There was one that released on the Switch, but they only gave it a limited window for purchase, and I bought it, but I hadn't played it yet. Can't remember which one it is.
I'm typing to find out. Limited release window. It had a special edition that my brother got me for Christmas. Oh, it is for a limited time only. Wow.
I literally bought it the week before it stopped, just so I had it, but I haven't played it yet.
That's crazy. So they stopped selling it in March of 2021.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even on shelves for a year. That's
They
what a
did the
silly
same thing
thing.
to that Super Mario All Stars. That's why I bought that, but hadn't played it yet too.
What a dumb thing to do, Nintendo.
Yeah.
But it's cool. The collector's edition's cool. It's got like an art book. It's mostly Fire Emblem Heroes artwork of the characters from this game, which isn't the most
Mm.
exciting thing, but it's
I was
fine.
gonna say you had me in the first half.
Yeah, I'll let you look at it when you come over sometime. But
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
this game it's neat. The re-release had some cool features like turn rewinding, and I think you can speed up enemy movement, which is something you couldn't do in the original, so it took forever on enemies'
I think
turns.
they redid some of the graphics in the remastered version, right? And then they let you have the option to swap back to the original.
Not that I know of, but that's
Oh, okay.
entirely possible. But yeah,
Well, again, I haven't played it. I just remember watching the trailers and I was like, that's pretty cool.
I played like the first four chapters, and I was like, wow, this is really hard. Not only is it like more difficult than modern Fire Emblem games, but like controlling it is kind of
Hmm.
obnoxious. It just doesn't have the modern touches. Like it's a very specific order between selecting your unit, selecting move, moving them over, selecting stop. Like there's just three or four extra button presses in every turn with each unit than there needs to be. But it's a neat game.
Fair.
If you have it,
Hmm.
then check it out, and if not, then
Just play Shadow Dragon
just
instead, right?
yeah. I guess just play Shadow Dragon, or if you can't find a cheap copy of that, just sail the seas. Figure it out, man. Okay. And then I figured this would be a decent opportunity just to jump into all the other games we probably haven't played because none of them came out in America at all. But starting on the far left, there's Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem, which was the direct sequel to Fire Emblem 1. Technically, it was Fire Emblem 3, but it was a sequel to the first one. It came out on the Super Famicom in Japan. And then they
Sounds like
remade
we're going in
it.
Kingdom Hearts territory here.
They
These numbers
remade
and
it.
yeah.
Oh, you're going to love this name then. They remade it on DS, which is at the top of the screen, and that's called Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem. They went the new Super Mario Bros. Route on that. And they also added a player created character, which is in the top right. I haven't played the game. It didn't come out in America. They made Shadow Dragon, but didn't make the sequel in
I'm sure that there's
English.
an English port to this at this point.
I mean, probably, but I haven't played it because that'd be
Right,
illegal.
right.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I haven't played any of these either.
And then I might get these last two mixed up, but on the bottom one, the kind of yellowish one, I know for sure that that's Fire Emblem Thracia 776, which is just rolls off the
Kingdom
tongue.
Hearts.
Yeah, that stars Leaf, who is the most anime character in the world, and he still looks like the most anime character in the world in Engage. But
Look at his hair and the guy to the right of him's hair as well.
yeah, it's really good.
If that,
But
yeah,
yeah,
if that doesn't show you the anime-ness of them, I don't know what will.
that also came out on Super Famicom. I don't know anything about it. And then the very last one on the far right, that's ready for this, John? Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War is that full title. Not as bad, but that's a lot of words, and that stars Sigurd, who also looks very anime in this, but they kind of redesigned him a little bit better than Leaf and Engage.
Yeah, it's always funny, and I'm jumping ahead to Fire Emblem Engage,
That's
but
fine.
some of these guys are in that, and it calls them Emblem of, and then it takes a word from the name of their game.
Yeah,
And so Sigurd's was Emblem of Genealogy, and I was like, I've never heard of this game.
yeah. It was weird because the emblems had names, and then the rings had names, and
Right,
so it'd
yeah,
be
it
like
was they were different too.
yeah, so it'd be like Ring of the Holy War summons the
Hmm.
Emblem of Genius. It's like, why didn't you just make them have the same name? Because Emblem of
Right,
the Holy
right.
War is a way cooler name than Genealogy.
Yeah. It didn't seem
Um,
very fitting. I thought they were talking about Fates when they said that.
yeah, I mean,
Because that more aligns with Fates than I would say this, even though I've never played this one.
yeah, I just strictly judging it by its cover. That's my opinion.
I just know Fates, and
Yeah,
I know that that system probably was implemented in an older game.
no, that's fair. But yeah, all of these apparently cool. Would love to play them in English. Nintendo Intelligent System, whoever's listening, just make it happen. All right, back to English games. This is kind of a renaissance for the franchise. This is Fire Emblem Awakening. Mwah! Best Fire Emblem ever made. Right, John? You're nodding furiously, so I think you agree.
I'll agree with you, but I didn't play that much of it. Again, I swear to you, that game is in this drawer right here.
Sure, sure. You can just say you own them all. It's okay.
I mean, I can prove it if you want. I
Yeah,
just
you
didn't
should.
want
You
to move
just.
out of my camera
I don't care.
angle.
It's fine. While he's doing that, yeah. So this is Fire Emblem Awakening. Came out in like 2012, 13, I think 13. And this was the game where Nintendo basically was like, look, if they don't buy this game, we are not going to keep making Fire Emblem game in the West. Like, it's just not going to happen. We're not going to port them over. And
Yeah.
people bought it. And so that's why we have all the games that we have today. But this game is awesome. I'm vamping for you, John, while you get it out, while you draw the cover real fast on
See, the
that post-it
problem
note you grabbed.
is I have so many like DS games
I have
that,
so
and
many
these are
Fire
all
Emblem games.
these.
I'm
Well,
having
these are all
trouble.
Pokemon games in this section here, so these are all Pokemon games.
Oh, it's fine.
So I'm sure their Fire Emblem are in this drawer somewhere, but that's okay. We tried.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Awakening, it's either this one or Shadow Dragon that has that female brigand type character that I really liked. I can't remember which game it is.
I'm trying to remember what character you might be talking about.
You know, if you know what character I'm talking about, let us know down in the
Yeah,
comment
let us
section.
know.
After, of course, after you've liked our video.
All right. This game was the first game to introduce a lot of the social elements that Fire Emblem is kind of known for now. It introduced pairing up, which was a system where you could have two units fight together on the battlefield, and it also pairing up would lead to support increasing, which would lead to support conversations, which were a thing in the old games. Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Support conversations were a thing in the old game, but they kind of just happened on the battlefield, and they were really limited. Only like a
Right.
brother and a sister might have support, or people from the same village might have support. But Fire Emblem Awakening opened it up where almost everybody has at least a little bit of support dialogue with other characters. And the dialogue, when it's good, is extra character development, where you find out more about the characters, where they're from, what they've been through in their life, why they're fighting now, who they're fighting for, what they believe in. Um, as the series has gone on, sometimes it's just random stuff like, I'm hungry. I know how to cook. Here, have food. Thank you. And then they just move on. It's like, congrats. Now their support is higher, so they'll do better on battle together. But Awakening didn't have much of that. Most of the dialogue and the support writing in this game was really, really good. And it was also really fun just to get to know all the characters. And I don't love shipping characters, but that's kind of the point of this
You love
game.
what?
Shipping? Are you familiar with that term? I
Mm-mm.
can bring my wife in and tell you about it. It's when you take two fictional characters and you say, now kiss, and you make them be together romantically.
Oh, okay.
No, you're fine. You've never heard. Okay, that's fine. So yeah,
I've never heard
shipping,
the
John,
term.
would be the term where you're like, in this game, if you get close enough, if two characters get close enough to each other, they'll have a kid, and then through some time travel shenanigans that happens in the story, the kids will come and be units that you can use to fight in the future.
Okay.
And so the shipping that you would do is you would say, well, I like this character and I like that character. I'm gonna
Hmm.
make them bond really close so that they have a kid. And sometimes it could just be personality based. They're like, oh, this makes sense with the story, so I'm gonna do that. That's fine. But you could also do it strategically where this person has insanely high defense and this person has insanely high defense. I bet if they have a kid, they'll be untouchable. And most of the time, you're gonna be right, and it's gonna be awesome. And you get like a 14-year-old general who will never take damage no matter how many dragons attack him. It's great. But yeah, I love this game. If you're going to play a Fire Emblem game and you have a means to play Awakening, highly
Do it.
recommend Awakening. John, I highly recommend you play Awakening. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Just making sure I knew, huh?
Oh, okay, okay. I've told you to play like 4 40-hour games in the last half hour. All right. After
Well, you're
Fire
not
Emblem
wrong. I'm
Awakening,
sure they're great.
they are. Okay, after Fire Emblem Awakening, they went, you know what? You know what those Americans like? They like shipping anime characters. So what if we made a whole game that was about shipping anime characters? And that's how we got Fire Emblem Fates. Did you play Fates?
Very briefly.
So Fates is
Uh,
weird.
I
Yeah,
own all
please
three.
please go ahead. You own all three. Explain what that means. What do you mean three?
I thought Birthright, Conquest, and then there was a middle story, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. I just was going to let you talk to the audience for a second so I could
Oh,
drink some
I
water.
thought you were wanting me to explain that to you. I was like, well, it sounds like you know this better than me, and I'm just making things up now. So this story has your character branching off a few chapters in, and you have to choose which family you want to side with in this conquest. Conquest, I don't remember. A feud, I guess.
Yeah, there's a
And you
the
have to
families
side
have
with.
beef.
Mhm. Yeah, so you have to go with either Birthright, which is your original actual
It's
family.
your blood family.
Yeah, your blood family, and then Conquest is your like adoptive family.
Yeah, they like found you when you were a baby and like raised you for the first like 18 years of your life.
Right. And then the third story, I never played that one, so you have to tell them about the third story.
I haven't played it, but it's called
Oh.
Revelation, and so the way it works is they went the Pokemon route, and on store shelves day one there was a Conquest box and there was a Birthright box, and then you played through it, and there was a certain point where they were like, which family are you going to choose protagonist, and you had like dialogue choices, and the first one was I sided with whichever family was on the cover of the box you bought. But then the second choice was I side with the other family, and it was grayed out. And the only way you could do that was by spending like an additional $20, which is half the
Hmm.
price of the full game, to unlock the other story. And then there's a third option, which I choose neither side, and I never played that one to be honest, so I don't really know how that worked out.
And then,
Um,
if I'm not mistaken, they also made the difficulties different between the two sides too. Birthright was easier than Conquest, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right because I flew through Birthright and I got
Hmm.
like three-fourths of the way through Conquest, and I was like, "Woo, this is tough!" Like I was having a rough time with it. Um, it was an interesting experiment. I don't I don't know that I would say it was a good idea. What would you say? Like, do you would you if they were like, we're gonna do that again, where we have multiple versions of the same game? Would you be excited, or would you say, why didn't you learn your lesson the first time?
Didn't they kind of do that with Three Houses?
Kind of, but all that was on the same cartridge. They didn't try to
Oh,
sell you two different
you
versions.
meant, oh, you meant like physically sell two different games that you had to
Yeah,
purchase. No, I wouldn't like that. They do that enough with Pokemon. I don't need that for Fire Emblem too.
yeah. Pokemon gets like a 30-year storied franchise pass. You can't just start doing this 20 years into your run as a franchise and then I don't know. It was kind of gross and the stories weren't very good. They tried to take a not very good story and split it into three compelling narratives and it just didn't work for me. Um, it also got very, very anime and very, very fan servicey, and it's where some of the
Yeah.
character design started going away from, oh, that's really cool, to, oh, that's really suggestive for some reason, and that's not my personal favorite trend with this game series, but it is what it is. Some of the
Yeah.
designs are cool. I like most of the Birthright family designs. I think they're pretty cool. They're very like feudal Japan inspired. I wish I had my keys with me. I still have Ryoma, the guy with the brown hair and the red armor. I have like a little chibi pendant of him on my
Yeah.
keychain that my brother got for a pre-order bonus. All right, that brings us to a game that I think you've played, Fire Emblem Echoes. You haven't played that?
Nope.
Oh, I haven't either. Came out on 3DS after the Switch was out. I'm not gonna buy a 3DS game after the Switch is out. Let's port it, please. But this is a remake of Fire
Did they
Emblem
not port
2.
this?
They didn't. It's only on 3DS. It's a remake of Fire Emblem 2 on the NES, or on the Famicom, I guess, technically. Never came out in the US. They did a remake of it in like 2018 after the Switch was out.
I really like his armor though. Looks
Yeah,
cool.
I've heard it's good. The main characters are Alm and Celica from left to right. Celica's in Engage. Um, I don't know that much about it. I know it has some really interesting ideas because, Fire Emblem 1 came out, kind of set the foundation of the story, and Fire Emblem 2, usually the sequels try to spice it up a little bit, like Zelda 1 to Zelda 2, Mario 1 to Mario
Right,
2.
right. Hmm.
They did some weird things like mages would cast really strong spells, like way stronger than they do now, but at
They're
expense
glass
to their
cannons.
HP. They would take
Yeah.
damage. And
Oh,
then there were other things like archers could attack between like 1 and 3 or 4 spaces away, but I think they were a little bit weaker or something like that. So they did some kind of
okay.
interesting things with the strategy.
So that's why her character damages itself, or
Mm-hmm.
got the ring on damages themselves and engage. I
Yeah,
was so confused why that was happening.
yeah. It's
I
really, I
didn't
think it's a
like it.
really cool like nod to the series, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it's a cool nod to it now, and now that you say that, it makes sense. But at the time, I was like playing through the game, I was like, "This is dumb. Why am I
This is
taking damage
this is
every
the worst
time?"
ability ever. But now that it's a reference, you're like,
You're
sweet.
like, well, I'm like, well, yeah, I get it now.
But
But
yeah,
before it didn't make sense because I never played the game.
I've heard it's good. Maybe we should do a backlog crew on that one. But
Yeah,
then
maybe
we get
so.
to the next Switch game, or the first Switch game, I guess, which is Fire Emblem Three Houses. Very, very good game. Very, very good game. Claude is my boy. He's the one that's upside down for some reason this way. And it, like John was saying a second ago, it kind of had the multiple storylines, but it was all on one cartridge. You didn't have to buy multiple versions of the same game. You were an instructor at a monastery, and you chose one of three houses, kind of like Harry Potter, for lack of a better comparison. And
Basically, yeah.
each of those houses had their own storyline, and I'm pretty sure one of them has like a split where it's kind of gets another storyline. So there's like four possible routes you can kind of go. I chose the Golden Deer playthrough. Really cool. It's kind of, I would say, the least important to the overall plot. Like the characters are kind of more worried about their own things than what's happening with all the other characters. So I actually
Yeah.
don't have my thumb on the pulse of what this game is really supposed to be about. I really want to go back and finish a second playthrough of it. But John, what do you think of this game?
I went with the Blue Lions, I believe, is the house
Mm-hmm.
because this is, I mean, you can see in the artwork there, this is a main character with a lance. So,
Makes sense.
and I think I liked, so whenever I was choosing a house, I went and looked at all the different characters that were in each house, and I picked the one where I
Mm-hmm.
liked most of the characters. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's what you should do.
this house, I liked this house. So I went with them, and it was a very good story, I would say. I didn't like all the slog of running around the monastery because it was way too big and doing all of that stuff constantly after every match. Um, so I never actually completed my second playthrough. I started it and like
Mm-hmm.
right after the first one because I wanted to see the other houses and see how the story differed between them. And I just could not bring myself to finish the second playthrough just because it was way too much micromanagement in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like because I wanted to try higher difficulty, I was going to try the Maddening one. I felt like I had to go do all that again, and I really did not want to do that. So I just never played it again.
Yeah, they went hard on some of the social stuff in Three
Hmm.
Houses. What you're describing, in between missions, like exploring kind of a home base of operations, talking to the characters, collecting materials, that's something that kind of started with Fire Emblem Fates, is when they started doing that. Like, oh, you collected oranges. You can use oranges to do something now, to give your one unit plus three defense next battle, and just very minuscule
Hmm.
impact, things like that. That started with Fates, and they did it again with Three Houses. I will say it's a lot more rewarding in Three Houses just because the writing is so good and the characters are so interesting.
Yeah, at least the
It
writing was better for this game.
it definitely slowed the gameplay down more than I would like. Like I would spend 30 minutes in kind of the hub world just doing fetch quest type stuff in between the
Giving
battles that I
people their
actually
lost
wanted to do.
shoes and books.
Yeah, every time there's a lost item, and then you got to talk to everybody to figure out if it's their thing that they lost, and then you go and have a meal because that'll increase stats and also increase support. And there was good stuff in the monastery. I think overall I liked the monastery. And again, you're a teacher, so you're helping improve
Mhm.
your units' skills by like assigning them a curriculum. And so everybody kind of starts at this little baby student class, and you say, well, I think you would make a good mage, so I want you to study magic. Okay, I think you would be a good cavalier, so I want you to study like equestrian.
I
And
actually didn't even bring that up, but that was one of my favorite mechanics of this was allowing me to make any unit any way I wanted to.
mhm,
That was really cool.
yeah, and it was really cool. And for people who aren't creative like me, I mean, there's some pretty obvious archetypes that the characters kind of fall into. Like, there's a girl who's like, "Boy, I sure do love riding horses and shooting bows." and she makes a pretty good bow knight. But you don't have to make her that. You can make her whatever you want, and you can even make the protagonist whatever you want. I ended up mine being kind of a black knight, like a horseback mage. What did you make your main character?
I did magic and swords.
See, oh, I was going to say completely different, but they're a little similar, but kind of different. Um,
Hmm.
but the level of customization in that was really cool without being obnoxious, I think. And yeah, Three Houses is a great game. I think besides Path of Radiance, I'm sorry, besides Radiant Dawn, I think it has like the most compelling structure for telling a story. It just is kind of strange that to get the full story, you really need to play it 3 or 4 times, which is a big ask because that's knocking on 180 hours of gameplay probably.
At least you didn't have to buy three different games to do it.
And that's very true, and we're grateful. Thank you, Intelligent Systems. But yeah, that game's great, and then that brings us to the newest Fire Emblem game, and we're gonna really dig into this one, Fire Emblem
Yes, we are.
Engage. Um, John, I feel like you have some things to say. Do you mind if I set the table first?
Go for it.
Okay. So Fire Emblem Engage just came out in January of 2023. It's been out for about a month at the time of recording. This is the newest Fire Emblem game. They had a very short window from announcement to release. Like Fire
Yep.
Emblem is usually one of those where they announce it and then you don't hear about it for a couple years, and then they're like, okay, it's coming out next year, and then it might get delayed, and then it comes out. And John bought the special edition. They announced this, I think, in like November, like October or November, in a Nintendo Direct, and then they released it in January. So that's a crazy turnaround for a AAA game, especially a series that's not known for that.
I
But
know how they saved a lot of time.
let me set the table, John. They okay. So Fire Emblem Engage, the premise it's a pretty typical Fire Emblem story. You play as a person. Who you play as a person, John? Did you know that? They have a
Yeah, either
sword.
Pepsi or
You
Colgate, whatever way you want to look at it.
or what? What'd you say?
Pepsi or Colgate, whichever one you want to be.
Okay, John. John doesn't like some parts of this game, which he will get to talk about after I set the table. But you play as a dude with a sword or a girl with a sword. You travel the kingdoms. You meet friends. You gather a force and you fight a dragon. Very typical Fire Emblem story. What they do that makes this game unique is that Engage that you see in the title. There's a system where there are these rings that contain the spirits of all the protagonists of all the other Fire Emblem games. And so, like Marth, Roy, Lynn, Ike, just all the people we've been talking about throughout this video are available, and they basically serve as partners to the new characters in this game. And they give them upgraded stats and access to new skills. So rather than getting skills from parents, like in Awakening, or from other partner units like in Radiant Dawn, you're getting skills from these emblem rings. And you can also engage, which is basically fusing with the emblems to become like an ultra powerful version with some ultra powerful skills that have like limited use and limited time before you turn back into
Hmm.
a normal chump. Um, but yeah, that's the game. I think those are interesting mechanics. I'm sure I'll have more to say after John has what he wants to say. But John, the floor is yours. Take as much time as you'd like.
All right.
I'm
Well,
good.
let's start with the bad, and then and I'll jump to good after that.
Oh, you have good.
So,
Thank goodness.
oh yeah. There's a good bit of good.
Okay.
There's just a good bit of bad too.
Okay.
So we're gonna go over the bad part. So whenever we were looking at this game, there were a lot of reviews, and those reviews said that the combat's great, story part's garbage,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really confused why they would say that. I was like, most people, whenever I was reading the reviews, were saying that the story was not like Three Houses. It was not as what's the word I'm looking for? It's not as
In depth, thorough.
in depth. Yeah. It's not as in depth as Three Houses, and I was like, well, I'd be okay with that because I did not like all that running around at the monastery. So I thought
Yeah.
that's what they meant. But what they actually meant is just the story was just a wet hot garbage. So I did some highlights here
Oh boy.
on what about the story wasn't
Okay.
that good.
Let's just go ahead and throw up full spoilers.
Oh yeah,
Full spoilers
definitely.
for Fire Emblem Engage.
You have 3 seconds because here I'm about to go. Three, two, one. All right. My biggest complaint was the main character worship. I would say every
Mm,
single character, no matter how they join you, whether it be an enemy previously that joins you or just the people you start with, just the main character worship. There are specific units that I would not use. Fram, I believe, would be one of them
yeah,
because every time you click on her to move her around the map, she yells at you, "Oh my gosh, the divine dragon looked at me!" And
yeah.
there's so many times you can hear that before you don't want to hear it anymore.
That was annoying, and I took her out of my party for the same reason. But for just being thorough, your character is literally a deity. Like I said, he's just some guy. He is literally a deity, like the embodiment of a continent's religion. So it does make sense that the characters are reverent towards you, or the protagonist, I guess.
Hmm.
It does get a little overboard. I don't know because you didn't use Fram at all. I don't know if you did any of her supports, but her
No,
and
not at all.
Clan, they're stewards, which means they're responsible for looking out for the Divine Dragon. They also are the co-presidents of a
Oh yeah, I
fan
know
club
this.
for
Yeah,
the Divine Dragon, of which they are the only two members. So yeah, the two of them kind of go overboard, but I think in general it's not that bad.
I did use him,
I did
although he
too.
does have the same exact annoying references. At least I had half of them. Um, so every character, including some that would eventually join you later, including again spoilers. Here we go.
Yeah.
Ivy joins you later on,
Hmm.
and she is constantly talking to you and like, I'm gonna take you out for my country for everything. And then when she joins you, she treats you with like reverence magically. Like as soon as she joins you, she flips and's like, "Oh, divine dragon, thank you so much for cleansing our country and blah blah blah." Just
Yeah.
immediately,
I
it
think
just felt
that
so out of place.
I think the heel turn was a little bit quick, and I promise this whole video is not going to be me saying actually, but
Go for it.
I do think that they set up where her storyline is she is not happy to be doing what she is doing. She does not
Yeah,
agree with the
that's fair.
actions she is taking, but her father is asking her to do it, so she's doing it because she trusts
Hmm.
him as her father and her king. Because there are dialogue later if you like get support with her where um, she is like a devout worshiper of the divine dragon, even though she is the princess of a country that worships the fell dragon, which is
Okay,
like I guess God and Satan, if you're going to make a very simple comparison. So
right.
she secretly worshipped him anyway, but fought him because her dad told her to. And the heel turn is really fast because they don't make that super clear. But
Hmm.
I'm going to be devil's advocate for
That's fair.
some of your objections, unless I agree, because there are things I definitely do not like about this
All
game.
right. So making our way through, these two kind of go hand in hand, but I'll just go ahead. So enemies casually strolling into castles and taking them over. It's
Yeah,
just so instant.
it's
It's
pretty
like
bad.
the whole point of a castle is to be a stronghold to defend. But every single castle in this game, as the Divine Dragon goes around
Hmm.
to everywhere, these castles are magically taken over by all the enemies every single time.
Yeah,
And then going along with that, and I'm only saying this because they go hand in
no, you're
hand,
fine.
enemies casually strolling into conversations with the main characters as well.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's a symptom of the way they deliver story in this game, rather than having dynamic cutscenes or even dynamic landscapes. Pretty much everything happens in a flat area that has like background image, and so characters will be literally like 4 feet from each other having a face-to-face conversation like I can't believe you just killed my mom, I'm gonna come and get you, and then they'll be like you can try, and then they'll talk for like 20 more minutes because some of the cutscenes,
Exposition
my
dump.
Switch tried to
Mhm.
go to sleep 4
Multiple
times
times.
during one cutscene, and I tried to check the settings and I could not find a way to turn like the sleep timer up, but yeah. Anyway, I digress.
All right.
But yeah, and then they're talking face to face about how evil they are and how much they're gonna kill each other, and then I'm like, just do it then. They're right there, and then they like turn
Hmm.
around and monologue to themselves. I'm like, just do it. They're not even looking at you. And then it's like, all right, let's go. And then the battle starts, and they're like all the way across the castle. And it's like, what just
Right.
happened? What was this story that just happened in front of me? It was very. You had to suspend your disbelief a lot to accept what was
Right.
happening.
And then also there would be additional scenes where there would be conversations between those bosses and someone in your party because you have all the lords and ladies of each of the different
Right.
respective kingdoms. They'll be having conversations with these bosses, and then randomly Alir will jump in and say something like out of pocket that doesn't make any sense. But they're like reminding you the main character is actually there. It's just what some of those felt like. I'm not gonna say all of them, but there
Yeah.
was just some where Alir would start talking about something, and I feel like it was just their thing. Like, oh yeah, the main characters here. We have to make them say
And
something.
and Alir always had, like you were saying, some Kingdom Hearts nonsense where he was like, "But I will defeat you with the power of friendship and hope." And it's like, cool. Her dad just died. Like, just give her a minute, okay? Like,
Yeah.
leave her alone. He just
Um,
saw 100 of his villagers burned alive. Like, give him a second. Don't talk about the power of friendship right now. It was
right, and
really
then
annoying.
going along with that, actually, trying to make me care about a character that they just had me meet, like,
Like who?
like, like for example, the mother. Like, you just met her, and she dies, and then it's supposed to be a really sad scene,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, you can't be sad your mom died when you just you didn't really remember her like a
Yeah, because
minute
he was
ago, and
amnesiac. Yeah.
she's like, I'm your mom. And
I,
oh no.
maybe I'm a sucker, but did you play as male or female, Aaliyah?
Male Illyr.
Okay, I did too. I thought he was, as annoying as some of his writing was, I thought the voice actor did a very good job. Um, and I know that's a contentious statement. Most people seem to agree that the female voice actress did a better job, which I think she did fine as well. But that scene got me, and it could have been the fact that I was watching it with my wife, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and the lights were off, and we were holding hands, and we were just emotional. But that scene got me, and I felt for him because he did. He woke up, he had nothing. He found out he had a mother who cared about him, who saved his life in like the first 10 minutes he was awake. And then she died, and he like kind of remembered her, but not really. And I don't know. I'm a sucker. I thought that was
That's
emotional, but I definitely
that's
see what you're
fair.
saying. They
Yeah.
definitely do pull stuff like that.
And let's see, another I had was they would introduce a major problem to the plot, and then 9 times out of 10 they would resolve that problem in the same conversation. The same conversation.
There were so many times where I was like, we're probably getting close to the end. Like, we're wrapping up the main objective of this game.
Well,
And they would
wait.
be like, but actually, you have to destroy the 3 dragon shards. It's like, what? Don't we?
Yeah.
Let's just go kill him. It's like, no, you gotta you gotta complete 3 more missions. It's like, oh, okay,
Um,
sure.
and actually, you bringing up that mission brings me to another thing. The enemies just giving away their plans and secrets, followed by "We were bad, but now we're good," is way too much. So the like you wouldn't even be able to finish the game if one of the very main enemies at the end is like, "I am dying. You can't
Yeah,
finish your mission. However, I made you this thing that actually killed me, not you. I killed
yeah.
myself." Um, and here's the item that will save the day. I'm good now.
Right. They try to justify it with kind of a I was helping him to get something from him, but I see that I'm not going to get that, so screw him. I'm going to help you out of spite. It doesn't really work for me. That was strange. I think
Mhm.
the scene that happened after that with the two of them, I'm you can say their names because we did spoiler warning, but my wife's literally in the next room playing it, so and she's like at that part, so I'm not gonna say anything.
I
I
can't remember
thought
her name, but his name's Griel, I believe.
it's Chris.
Riss?
Yeah, Gri. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, shows you how much You figure
like
I'd remember it with how many times I had to fight him, because
I
making me fight the same bosses over and over was another complaint I had.
you do entirely fight the same bosses over and over, way too much. And
How many times do I have to teach you this lesson, old man? Like, I get it. I fought you 9 times already.
it's a weird thing to complain about because Fire Emblem, because it's so long, like most games are between 25 and 40 chapters. it's hard not to get like Freak of the Week syndrome, which is one of my favorite um, like sayings for like a superhero TV show or like a detective
Hmm.
TV show where every week there's a new villain for some reason and they're like wild and wacky and they got to stop them in 40 minutes. But Fire Emblem kind of has that same thing where it's like, oh, there's this new guy who's like a big enough villain to be a boss, so let's make him the boss. But honestly, that kind of works better than using the same 4 or 5 bosses,
Yeah, it would
like
make sense for them
literally
to have
five or
like
six
underlings
times.
or something. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, they did it at the beginning of where the woman that we were just talking about, I don't remember her name, um,
Zephia.
Zephia,
Yeah.
had an underling, and whenever we defeat them, she kills them. Why wouldn't she have at least,
It's
one or two
like,
more? So I didn't have to fight her, that many
so y'all
times.
got any more of those underlings? And it's like, nah,
Yeah,
we killed them all. Sorry.
you got the one.
Yeah, sorry. He really wasn't good at his job. It was his first day. We were trying something new. Didn't work out.
Um, but yeah, just fighting them over and over again. It's fine to refight bosses multiple times, but not that many times.
Not when the it's made very clear that the protagonist has no intention of showing the antagonist mercy.
Right. Yeah.
And then when they're defeated, they just go get up and say, "I guess I better retreat."
That's why usually I have them surrounded when they do that too, because that's just adding insult to injury for
Yeah.
me. Like literally, I have you surrounded on all fronts, and you get
Mm-hmm.
to run away.
It's like, actually, I just dealt 147 damage to you in the last 3 seconds. You should die now. Like, I don't know what you think you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
And
that?
then
Yeah.
the last complaint I
No,
had.
keep going, man.
This is the last one, and this isn't even the game's fault. This is all whoever intelligence systems. Yes. Day one DLC, really? Day one DLC?
I, uh, yeah, fair. As long as it's a complete game, I don't really mind. They add extra emblems, but it's all optional.
Nope. It's literally pay to win.
But it's a single player game, you know. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like,
yeah. I know, but like, come
but
on.
fair. That's a topic for a separate press day to talk is
Right.
DLC. But I see your point. I'm not gonna buy it. I didn't even
I
know they
did
had
buy
day
it,
one
yeah.
DLC until they announced phase two, and I was like, where was phase one? When did that happen? But
Yeah.
did you have it included with your special edition?
No. Now that you mention it, no. Please don't spill
Oh
your
my
drink at your
gosh,
stream.
that's the dumbest
No.
thing I've ever heard. You can't
And
sell a special edition and not include the day one DLC with it.
what's great is, do you want me to mention something that's in the DLC?
I don't care. That's fine.
Okay. One of the very first ones you get is a ring that lets you turn into a dragon when you engage.
Oh, is it
And
Tiki?
yes, and the
Okay.
special version and the special skill Tiki provides is like a 20% increase in XP or something. Yeah, like it very very much was pay to win. Like if you give that to a character, that character's just fantastic. I can't remember if it gives them extra XP or if it gives them greater chances of getting a +1 on each of the different stats. It's one of those two. I can't remember which one.
Either way, those are
But
great,
yeah,
like grinding abilities.
right. Yeah, so whoever you give that to is going to turn out to be a fantastic unit, and like it just seems weird that they would make that a feature. So, but anyway, those are the bad. You
Well,
want me to
now
start
it's
on some good?
no, now it's my turn to go in on this game,
Go.
and then we'll get to the good. Okay,
All right.
so first things first, it has a very slow start. Like usually when I get a new game, I'm like, let me play this for 4 hours, and then I'll be like, oh, it's 2 a.m. And it's Thursday. Let's go to sleep. But not this game. I played like the first 2 chapters, and I was like, woo, that was a lot, and it was very boring. I'm gonna go to bed now. It picks up. I think the second half of this game is vastly more interesting than the first half of this game. I think once you finish your like world
I'd agree
tour
with
of
that.
rounding up all your main characters, the game gets easily like exponentially better. Um, Also, you're welcome to jump in. You don't have to just sit here and let me
Oh no no
list.
no!
You do
I
you.
agree. I agreed with you.
Okay.
Yeah, it does have a slow start, and it starts you off with a lot of annoying characters too.
Oh my, that's my next point. A lot of the characters are really one dimensional, again, this gets better in the second half of the game, where a character, or not even the second half, like the second, like the last three-fourths of the game, it's better with new characters. But like the first 6 or 7 characters you get in your army literally are someone drew a personality trait out of a hat and said, "How can I turn this into a character you spend 40 hours with?" Like it's literally like, and likes to exercise. All right, write 100
That's the
lines of dialogue
personality.
about liking to exercise.
Yep.
And
Likes
or
tea, same thing.
yeah, and it's crazy because there's like 5 or 6 characters like that, and then you get a character like Louis, who is my favorite character from this game, and I think he's endlessly fascinating because his whole thing. Wait, what did you say?
He is something. Like he's a great character, but
Yeah,
like those the supports and everything,
so his whole thing is that he people watches.
he's a stalker.
But the thing is that's what my wife said. He said he's creepy. He just watches people. It's like,
He
but the thing
is
is when
creepy.
people approach him and they're like, "Why are you watching us?" He explains
I'm
that.
just observing.
Yeah, he explains. He's like, it's like bird watching for me. I'm interested in the way people behave and what they do when they're in certain situations. And
I
he
had a
always does two things. He explains it in a logical way that isn't creepy, and then if they say that's still creepy, please don't do that, he apologizes and then doesn't do it again. So like, yeah, it's kind of weird, but I think that's a fascinating to just own. He likes what he likes. He will be honest about it, and then he will be like, "My bad, didn't mean to make you
my
uncomfortable."
I actually had a sociology professor in college who legit said that one of his favorite pastimes is people watching.
Hmm.
He'd just go to the mall or something. He says, I just people watch. And I was like,
I
that's
think
pretty
more.
weird.
I think more
But
people do that than you think.
yeah, that's fair.
Like I
It's just not my
definitely,
thing. Not my thing.
it's not a hobby for me, but I definitely will like if I'm just sitting somewhere killing time. I'll definitely will just watch people just to see what's going on around me. Not like stare, but if I see somebody doing something weird, I'll be like,
Yeah, I mean, I do that as well, but I'm
yeah,
not like particularly like intentionally doing it. I may look
hmm,
around, and see other people, but I'm not
yeah.
intentionally like write that down, write that. Oh, okay,
Well, I love
interesting.
Louis, and I think he's hilarious. And he was my strongest unit by far. He literally, I don't think, took any damage for the last like 10 chapters. Like
I'm
he
going to tell
just,
you who my strongest unit
yeah.
was.
Go ahead.
Jean,
Yeah.
literally my best unit.
So excuse me. So Jean is like the. We're talking about how you get little bitty baby units that are really weak, and then if you spend time with them, they get strong.
Yeah,
I'm really
we
happy for
adopted him.
you because Jean was very obviously that unit. He's like a little British boy for some reason, even
Wants
though
to
no
be a
one else is
doctor.
British. He wants to be a doctor. He also likes punching bad guys in the face. I spent so much time leveling him up, and he never paid out for me.
You know what?
Like,
I made mine a Griffin Knight with 11 sword, and he just dominated
well,
everything.
if you're gonna give him 11 sword, then anybody's gonna be. No, I kept him on the same path. I made him just a martial monk, and he just didn't pay dividends the way I thought he would. I kept him on my team because he was a good healer, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, he was fantastic unit. And surprisingly, one of my better units was Chloe.
Chloe had like a thing
I
where
made
she
her a
was
Wyvern
bad,
Knight.
and then she was really good at the end. I made her a Griffin Knight. Just I'm boring. I follow a standard trajectory for most of my units. But let's get
That's
into
that's fair. Yeah, yeah.
let's get into the characters more in a
Sidetracked.
second. No, you're fine.
Yeah,
I started it. Other cons that I wrote down is the first half is really easy, and then the second half felt like it was a respectable difficulty for me. I wish I'd played it on hard, but I chose normal. It's crazy that you can't bump up the difficulty, but I guess there's probably like an achievement or something that they don't want people to cheat and get.
I didn't get an achievement for beating it on hard.
Okay, well then it's dumb that you can't change the difficulty because by like chapter 3, I was like, I really want to change it, but the first 2 chapters were so slow and
I
long that
think you can
I don't
only
want to do
lower
that.
it. You can't up it.
You can lower it, and then if you lower it, you can't raise it back again. But
Correct.
the second half was adequately challenging for me, but I was also extremely underleveled. Like I was like 6 or 7 levels under the units in the last couple of chapters, just because I stopped grinding and I stopped killing all the enemies and was just like gunning for the bosses.
I did maybe 5, 6 paralogs at
Hmm.
most.
Yeah, me
I
too.
the end of the game was trivial doing that many, and there's like 40 different paralogs. There's a lot of
Well,
paralogs,
there's
especially counting in the DLC. But
yeah, I
like
don't know about the
doing,
DLC. There's the 14, I think, in the base game,
yeah.
which is a
Oh,
lot.
okay.
Well,
Uh,
I'm doing that math. I
Exaggerated
think
then.
there's one for
Um,
each emblem ring, which there's 12 of those, and then
yeah,
there's one where
and
you get Jean and one where you get Anna, and I think that's it. There might be a few more, but I think that's it.
yeah. Um, so kind of the end of the game got pretty trivial, where I was just one rounding every enemy that I
Sure.
was against, and the bosses, the right weapon type was one rounding one of their health bars.
Hmm.
So it got really easy near the end, doing like 6 paralogs,
Yeah.
and that includes the 2 DLC ones I did. I didn't even do all the DLC ones. I just did like the first. Actually, I only did one DLC one because I got Tiki, and then they give you the first one without having to do a paralog. So,
Have you considered, John, that you're just actually really smart and really good at strategy games? Oh,
nah.
you don't think that's it?
No, because I would have played Maddening, and then I would have realized Maddening. I feel like there's a really big jump of difficulty between hard and Maddening because I played the first few chapters in Maddening, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this as much as I would if I just played this on hard. That's why I went back down to hard and
Yeah,
restarted.
that's
But
unfortunate.
then hard ended up being trivial, so because they don't let you do any skirmishes or anything in Maddening. But I feel like if I would have made it far enough and done the paralogs,
Yeah.
especially with the DLC stuff added in, where it would have been a lot easier than I first playthrough. But that's fine.
Another thing, the animations in the cutscenes, what very little animations there were
Like 5.
yeah, they kept being reused over and over again. And so you meet a character named Yunaka who's got like a very bubbly personality, and she's like waving all over the place. Yeah, I didn't really like her either, but she's like waving all over the place, and I'm like, oh wow, they gave her some unique animations. And then I played the next 30 hours of the game, and I was like, oh no, that's just the animation that they give girls when they're excited about something. And literally every single character, female character, uses that exact same animation.
I don't know why people like Yunaka,
People like
and
Yunaka.
I will never understand.
I can think of a couple good reasons, but I don't personally care for her.
I
Um,
benched her as soon as I could.
yeah, which is a shame
I
because I don't like the other thief that you get either. And
I didn't
also
use either one.
you
I didn't
can't
like either
class up
one.
the thieves into like assassins or rogues, which is weird.
Yeah,
But
they just give them extra levels.
yeah, the class system is kind of weird in this game. I'm not gonna call it a complaint, but I'm gonna complain about it. I really like in Fire Emblem how there's very set, well, not set, but historied classes. Okay, you have the Myrmidon who uses a sword. You have the knight who's a heavily armored lance user. You have a cavalier who rides a horse and they use swords and lances. And that's consistent across so many of the games that for this game to say if you are on the ground and you are using a melee weapon, you are a fighter, and you are either a sword fighter, a lance fighter, or a axe fighter. But all of them are fighters. There's no mercenaries, there's no myrmidons, there's no pirates. You're all just fighters. And then to go the same direction, when you advance classes, those are mostly, the unique classes that we've been accustomed to: paladin, great knight, sage, things like that. But then because they all come from the same like base level classes, they can all use the same weapons. And so a paladin can use an axe and a spear, or a sword and a spear,
But you only get 2.
or a sword and an axe. And then a wyvern rider can also use an axe and a spear, or a sword and a spear, or a sword and axe. And the great knight can also, and they all have the same weapons. And it's like, well, if everybody's super, then no one's super. Like if everybody has the same abilities, then it's not interesting. Like
Hmm.
these aren't unique units that I'm dealing with. They just have different skins and like slightly different skills.
Skill, yeah.
So I didn't love it. I didn't write that down. I just went off on that on the top of my head. I mean, overall, it's fine, but it's not my favorite thing. I do like how you can use emblem rings to gain proficiencies in weapons, and so
Hmm.
you can turn someone who's never held a bow into a sniper because they get experience using a bow when they're engaged with an emblem that knows how to use a bow. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, last two things real fast. Sim elements for me were really boring. I stopped going to the Somniel, which is like the home base. I stopped going there about halfway through the game, and I only
Yeah,
checked in once or twice.
I only went there for getting ingots from the dogs that I had
Mm,
and um, reminding myself to do the support conversations with the rings and then skipping
yeah.
through the support conversations with the
But
rings
see,
and the characters.
but see, the beauty is you don't actually have to go to the Somniel to do those conversations. You can
Hmm.
just pause and go to reference and just do it
Right.
there, which is what I started doing once I realized you could do it. Um, so some people love that. Megan, my wife, absolutely loves going to the Somniel. She'll do a mission and then I'll leave for like an hour and I'll come back. And she hasn't
I
started the
loved
next
that it was
mission because
optional.
she's like hanging out with the characters, and that's awesome that that's there for other people. I appreciate that it's optional. Whereas in
Hmm.
Three Houses, it wasn't. I
Yeah, it
do
didn't
think
feel
that what
optional.
you
Yeah.
did in Three Houses in the hub world was more interesting, but I don't know which one I prefer: mandatory but interesting, or optional but not really
Optional
interesting.
all the way.
Yeah, okay. And then the very last one is kind of what you were saying. You skipped through the supports. I didn't because I was holding out hope to get to know some of these characters. Some of the support conversations are really interesting. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them really aren't very interesting. And it goes back to a lot of the characters are written as what personality trait came out of this hat? How can we turn this into a character? And it's just it gets old.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Did we cover all the bad?
I think we covered all the bad. We might try to. Oh, I don't like the intro theme. That's the last.
I hate when it starts playing. I immediately click the button as fast as I can.
Yeah, I
It's the
gotta.
worst one I've out of any of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll talk while you do that.
No, you're good. I just.
You want to jump to the good?
Yeah, the music's great. Besides the
Yeah, I'll
intro
let you
theme,
cover that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I enjoyed most of the music.
it's not as good as Three
And
Houses, but it's good.
yeah. And then one really good thing is the combat. The combat system is really good. They actually did a really good job on that. And one of the interesting mechanics they added is the break mechanics. So
Yeah, I really like
instead
that.
of the weapon triangle giving you extra damage against an opponent, instead they added in the break mechanic, which would allow you on a first hit, whenever you have advantage with your weapon, to break your opponent, meaning they can't hit you back that combat. And yeah,
Yeah, the break system is awesome because it really one of the things with Fire Emblem is basically for me it would always be all right, there's a guy with a sword over there. I can't kill him without taking damage. Let me send all my ranged characters to attack him from a distance and then finish him
right.
off. But with the break system, it gives you more options because, like John said, with the weapon triangle, it's kind of like rock paper scissors. Sword beats axe, beats lance, beats sword. So if there's a guy with a sword, I can go attack him with a lance, break him, and then he won't be able to counterattack.
You
John,
can attack
maybe
whoever you want.
correct me. Is it just for the next encounter, or is it for the rest of the turn?
It's that. So it's that combat. You break them and the next one.
Okay, so for that one and the next one, so like that's pretty good, especially when you're trying to train up some weaker units because
That's two people that don't take a hit from them if you attack first.
you don't have to lower them to one health and then send in your little baby to get the kill. So it really opens up options and it can kind of save your skin. Of course, you can also be broken, but I usually didn't find that to be an issue. But it would get a little bit annoying anytime I wouldn't see that one guy with a lance and I would send my sword
Yeah.
guy into
It's
like
great when you
a
do
horde
it.
of
It's not
enemies.
great when it
Yeah.
happens to
It's like,
you.
wait, you can't do that. That's cheating.
Yeah.
No, no, the tactics are really interesting. There's the smash mechanic, which pushes enemies away.
Hmm.
I didn't use that too much, mostly because the weapons
Same.
that allow you to use smash can't counterattack or attack more than once, which to me is not a worthwhile trade off.
Now Louis with a silver great lance, I've heard is really good
That makes sense. That makes
because
sense.
they always attack last, so it doesn't really matter on him
And he's
usually.
not going to take damage anyway, so that's
Right. Yeah.
the I will say like the silver blades and great lances and stuff are so strong. I really like
Hmm.
using those for things like if you engage with Marth, he has an attack called Lodestar Rush, where I think he attacks like seven times. I
9.
think 9 times. Dang. And it doesn't matter what weapon you're using, so you could use the biggest, heaviest weapon. And so I gave Alir Marth, and I gave him a silver blade, which is like the slowest weapon in the game. And he would deal like he could kill bosses in like one hit, or
I
not
didn't
one
think of
hit, but
that.
like one
That's
attack.
really smart.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
Of course, on the next turn, if anybody attacked him, he was screwed, but it was fine.
Yeah, yeah. Just protect him.
The emblems also added to the combat a lot. I really enjoyed. I think almost all of the emblems are really useful in their own unique ways. A couple that I never really got into. Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
The second half emblems were meh compared to the first half. I think they overstacked the first half emblems
I think they.
in usefulness anyway.
I think they kind of did. So who are your favorites? Let's just start there.
Let's see. My favorites were Lynn because I get put her on Jean
Hmm.
because those doubles really can save you in a pinch,
Yeah, I think the enemies
and
like automatically proc to the doubles if they're in
some of
range,
them.
which is
I think
interesting.
it's different in Maddening, but in Hard, yeah, it uses the same AI system as normal,
Okay.
and that more often than not, they would attack the doubles first before anyone else. And then another one I really liked was Sigurd,
Yeah.
just because of how amazing the movement capabilities were with his. And then I don't know. What about you?
My favorites were Lynn. Ike was my very favorite because he increases the defense of your units.
Hmm.
And so, like I was telling you, I gave him to Louis. And Louis literally took no damage for like the entire second half of the game because his defense was so high. And he has the Great Ether attack, which basically is
I put that on
if
Louis too.
yeah, basically if you can stand and not die in a group of enemies for one of their turns, then you are going to deal massive damage to like a large group. I think it's like 10 or 11 spaces wide. Like not
Right.
wide, but like circumference.
And I don't remember how, but putting that on Louis also gave him more resistance against magic attacks whenever he was engaged.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that one, but that makes sense as to, and again, improving his magic defense. But yeah, Ike was my absolute favorite, and then Lynn because she has that bow ability. I
Hmm.
mostly use Lynn with Diamant just because I had other sword users, and it was helpful to just have him be kind of an archer sometimes.
Hmm.
And also, I actually really enjoyed. We talked about how not all the support conversations are interesting. You also
Yeah.
have bond conversations between a character and an emblem, and those are extra not interesting most of the time. But if you pair up,
Luckily, they're short.
yeah, they're very short. They're like two lines of dialogue. But if you pair up the right characters, it's actually really interesting. Like Diamant with Lynn. Lynn was an emblem for the villain that killed Diamant's father.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
and then whenever she's like purified and she's fine, if you give her to Diamant and they have a bond conversation, their first conversation is basically like, "I feel uneasy fighting next to you. Like I know it wasn't your fault that you did what you did, but I don't know that I can trust you." And she's like, "That's fair. I hope that I can prove myself worthy of your trust." And then the next conversation, they're kind of as a middle ground. And then by the end, it's not just one or two comments. It's like actually a conversation where they're talking out what happened
Hmm.
and he's moving past it and is able to like forgive her. So it's interesting that those not all the dialogue is that
Terrible.
bad, yeah. But yeah, and then I also wanted to shout out Sigurd is great because I gave him to Jade, who I love. I love Jade. I made her a general in my playthrough, so her movement sucked. But I gave her Sigurd, and then she could just fly across the map, and it didn't matter.
I gave
Um,
Chloe Sigurd near the end.
I bet that'd be super great because she could literally get anywhere with that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then last one I wanted to shout out is Byleth, who isn't that impressive, but he has the Goddess Dance, which lets up to four of your units go a second time. And when you're fighting bosses, with me
That's great.
struggling under leveled, it was amazing to have that. And I gave that to Alfred because
Nobody
what
likes Alfred.
what what else was Alfred gonna do, man?
Yeah. Nobody
He
likes Alfred. That's a good general consensus.
I played on classic mode, but I wasn't just having that time rewind function. Like I can't not use it So I
Oh,
would
I
just
used it. I'm not even gonna.
so
I'm
I
not a
would just
purist. I used it.
I would rewind time, and I swear 50% of the time it was because Alfred died. And granted, after he changed classes, he got a lot better. But trying to get him, I leveled him all up to 20 before I changed our classes. Trying to get him to level
Mm,
20 was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, it was so
a grind.
obnoxious.
Yeah.
I like his character, and if you probably didn't, because I didn't. But in the menus, you can read like little a journal. Elier's
I
keeping a
didn't read
journal of all
any
the
of those.
characters.
Yeah.
You find out that Alfred, again, his whole thing is exercise, and that's kind of annoying. And they don't bring it up in the main story. But if you look in the journal, it mentions that when he was born, he got very sick, like he was going to die.
Did he die of sickness too?
Yeah, but that's part of it. Like to me, that's more compelling. He was very sick. He was going to die, and then he recovered and was so weak that he made it his goal to be strong enough that people wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. And he never really
Well,
gets
he didn't
there.
succeed. Yeah, he
But
didn't
he's
succeed.
trying, and that makes me like him enough to
Yeah, you
accept
know.
it. But like from a gameplay perspective, it was very obnoxious to play with
Yeah.
him. Um,
Okay.
I think the
I
story
yeah.
by the end of it was I was satisfied with the ending. I'm not going to speak too in detail about it because again, right next door we're playing the game right now. But I think enough interesting things happened in the second half of the story. There's some nonsense that we already discussed that you talked about, but I think it's interesting enough. Some of the redemptions feel kind of hokey, but some of them feel reasonable. And I don't know. I walked away from it going, that was an okay story for a game.
I walked away going, "Wow, that was a terrible story," but I had fun.
Okay. Well, at least you had fun. Yeah, I'm not saying it was great, but it was fine. Like it was fine. I don't know a better adjective. It was okay.
Yeah,
Um
you put fine with like dining, and you really got yourself something in
yeah,
there, huh?
dining, wine, all the good stuff. Water, fine
Yeah.
water. Um we've kind of talked about all my good things. I
Yeah,
guess
I mentioned the one good thing, the combat.
the one good thing. You don't have any other good things?
I love the combat was what I wanted. I wanted the turn-based strategy
Sure.
and the unique aspects of the game. That was what I wanted. I didn't want all the social garbage,
Okay. So you got what
stuff
you
like that.
wanted,
I got what I
and
wanted out of it. That's why I was like, this is all right.
your overall thoughts, your overall rating for the game is
I think I gave it what a 7 out of 10 in the group, 6 out of 10.
yeah. In
One
the
of
group,
those
you
two.
said 6. What
All
are you
right,
what are
I'm
you
gonna
feeling
stand by
right now
that.
in your gut? You sticking with it?
I stick with 6 out of 10
Okay.
because the combat really gave it the six.
So you're telling me the combat is worth 6 points and everything else is the other four?
Yeah, because I could skip all the extra stuff.
I would probably give it a 7 personally. I would give it a 7, which
Six for
that's
combat, one for this other stuff you liked.
we're splitting hairs. Obviously, like 6 and 7 is not that big a difference, but
It's fine.
it is it is if a student I'm a teacher, if a student handed me an assignment and the assignment was Fire Emblem Engage, I would give them a C, and then we would move on with our lives, and it would be fine. Like it's fine. It's a good strategy game. It's an okay RPG story with some very good characters, mostly very one note characters. Great music, really beautiful. Like, say what you want about like the character design. Again, we talked about how some of the character designs are more suggestive or fan servicey than I personally would like.
Like the face grill.
Well, yeah, the face grill is kind of funny, but like graphically and like the colors and everything, like this game is gorgeous. It's probably one of the
Vibrant.
it's vibrant. It's way more vibrant than Three Houses was. It's probably one of the best looking Switch games in my opinion, and that's with a lot of things happening. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say if you're a Fire Emblem fan, I definitely wouldn't say no, don't play this. I would just
No, I'd say
say
play it if you're a Fire Emblem fan.
yeah, and if you're like, but if you're gonna say, hey, I just got a Switch, I want to get into Fire Emblem, what game should I play? I would say Three Houses is what game you should play. And if you
Be
were like, I've
prepared for
never played
one
Fire
run.
Emblem at all, what game should I get? I would say Awakening, or if you want to get a Switch, Three Houses. I wouldn't. There'd be quite a list before I recommended Engage, but it was fine. I liked it
Fair.
more than Fates, if that means
That's saying
anything.
something. Yeah.
Anything you
All
want to
right.
say to wrap this up, John?
Nothing I can think of other than thank you all for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Press A to Talk. If you enjoyed this, then, well, John already did the shilling, so I guess I won't do it again. But yeah, thank you guys so much for making it to the end. Let us know what your favorite Fire Emblem game is in the comments below. Let us know what you thought about Engage. And as always, we'll see you on the next one. Bye.